Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right into it. Do you ever feel, chronically overstimulated? Like modern life is just this loud, nonstop, shallow blur? And maybe you've noticed that it kind of flattens your actual emotional experience, making those pure, small moments of joy feel incredibly rare? You are definitely not alone. We live in a world that is totally obsessed with speed, efficiency, and surface-level living, which is honestly exhausting. But today, we're unpacking a concept from the gift of the deeper mind, and we're going to look at the very real, scientifically backed reason why you might be experiencing the world this way. So let me ask you, have you always had this sneaking suspicion that you process things differently than everyone else? Like, you notice tiny shifts in the energy of a room that others just completely miss? Maybe you've been told your entire life that you're too sensitive, or you overthink everything, or you just feel things too much. Well, if you're nodding along right now, this is going to be a massive relief, because the source material we're looking at today offers a pretty amazing revelation. You aren't imagining it, and more importantly, your brain isn't broken.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. A feature, not a bug. 2. Architecture of deep processing. 3. Experiencing emotion and information. 4. The social and inner world. 5. The hidden costs of depth. And finally, 6. Leveraging your deeper mind. Let's dive in.
Starting off with Section 1, a feature, not a bug.
What if you've been operating with a feature and not a bug? For years, you might have assumed that your tendency to process things so deeply was a problem you needed to fix. But cognitive science actually tells a completely different story. Being too sensitive isn't a malfunction. Your brain is literally wired to process information, emotional tone, and context on a much deeper level. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just a completely different operating system.
Let's move to Section 2, architecture of deep processing. To understand this without getting bogged down in jargon, let's talk about sensory gating. Think of your brain like a nightclub, and sensory gating is the bouncer. For most people, that bouncer is super strict. He filters out irrelevant details so the brain doesn't get overwhelmed. But if you have a deeper mind, your bouncer is basically letting everyone in. You have lower sensory gating. That means more raw data is constantly flooding your conscious awareness. That's exactly why you remember the exact, slightly awkward phrasing someone used 3 months ago, or why you notice tiny environmental shifts. Your brain isn't throwing that data away. It's pushing it right to the front of your mind. And building on that, we have metacognitive awareness. Basically, this is your ability to observe your own mind at work. You catch yourself falling into patterns, you notice your own cognitive biases, and you literally think about thinking. Most people honestly never develop this capacity to a very high degree, but for you, it's automatic. It gives you this incredible level of self-awareness, though, let's be real, it can also be pretty agonizing when you literally cannot unsee your own flaws. So how does this actually show up in daily life? Well, these everyday behaviors map directly to your biology. Remembering exact phrasing? Like we said, that's lower sensory gating. Making wild, unexpected connections between completely unrelated topics? That's your brain's high integrative complexity. You're synthesizing information instead of just putting it in little boxes. And when you literally feel the sadness of a friend sitting across the table, that is high mirror neuron activation. It's not just a personality quirk, it is biological wiring. All right, Section 3, experiencing emotion and information.
You've probably heard the stat that communication is only 7% explicit words and 93% implicit subtext, tone, body language, microexpressions. Well, while most people spend all their energy just processing that 7% of spoken words, your deeper mind is effortlessly and sometimes involuntarily processing that massive 93% of subtext. So when someone says, "I'm fine," but their shoulders are tight, everyone else just moves on. But you don't, because that incongruence is blaring like a fire alarm in your head.
And because you process everything so deeply, you experience emotions differently too. For you, ambivalence is completely natural. You can hold multiple complex, totally conflicting emotions at the exact same time, and your brain doesn't force you to just pick one. You can be absolutely thrilled for a friend's promotion while simultaneously being terrified of how it's going to change your friendship. That isn't a contradiction. It's not confusion. It is just a much higher emotional resolution. Moving on to Section 4, the social and inner world. For a deeper mind, small talk isn't just boring. It is physically draining. It completely lacks any real semantic meaning, which basically forces you to compress yourself to fit the conversation. Genuine connection, on the other hand, gives you that emotional authenticity you crave. You actually need this depth to regulate your nervous system. So no, you aren't antisocial. You're just a deeply meaningful people person who requires real, authentic connection to actually feel safe. Now, because the external social world can be so draining, your inner world is incredibly rich. You probably have a vivid, almost hallucinatory imagination, you do a lot of active daydreaming, you create complex internal narratives, and you solve problems in a totally non-linear way, just jumping from dot to dot. What other people might dismiss as you just zoning out or staring blankly into space, that's actually your brain actively, associatively exploring and making sense of the world. Which brings us to section 5, the hidden costs of depth. We have to talk about the real burden of seeing so much. Because you see every angle and every perspective, you probably fall into analysis paralysis all the time, right? Making simple decisions can feel literally impossible, and because those mirror neurons are so active, you absorb all the emotional tension in the room, which leads to super rapid burnout. There is a sheer exhaustion that comes from constant mental processing. And ironically, you often experience this profound loneliness even when you're in a crowded room, simply because you're experiencing a level of complexity that the people around you just aren't. I want to share a quote that really hits the nail on the head. Your reflective capacity, which is a gift, can become a curse when it turns inward. When you combine that intense self-awareness with high personal standards, it can turn into some brutal, relentless self-judgment. You see all of your own flaws with high-definition clarity. And without a solid buffer of self-compassion, your beautiful, deep mind can become a really painful place to live. Finally, section 6, leveraging your deeper mind. Okay, so what do we actually do with all this? Let's look at 4 concrete steps we can pull from the research to help protect your energy starting tomorrow. First, try setting time-limited thinking sessions. Give yourself, say, 15 minutes to fully analyze a problem, and then force a mental pivot to break the overthinking loop. Second, work on distinguishing empathy from emotional fusion. You can absolutely understand a friend's pain without actually absorbing it into your own body. Third, seek out environments and careers that actually value your pattern recognition. And fourth, this is absolutely crucial, aggressively practice self-compassion right alongside that self-awareness. You have got to give yourself some grace. I want you to remember this. Every major intellectual, creative, and spiritual advance in human history came from someone who could hold complexity. In a modern world that is completely obsessed with shallow speed and quick hot takes, your depth might feel like a liability, but it's not. It is actually the very thing that drives meaningful human progress. You are built for depth, and that is a tremendous asset. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Your deeper mind is a superpower. How will you leverage its depth today? It is time to stop apologizing for how your brain is wired. Stop trying to cram yourself into shallow boxes and start using your unique gift to see the world in high definition. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a whole new appreciation for the beautiful complexity of your own mind. See you next time.